No one expected her to speak. Not Micky McCoy, not TPUSA, and definitely not Erika Kirk. But when Micky's wife broke her silence, she didn't just share an opinion. She leaked information that detonated across the internet like a political earthquake. In a single post, she exposed the names, the messages, and the meetings that had been kept hidden behind Turning Point USA's polished image. And at the center of her revelations were two people the public never thought would be working together: Erika Kirk and the TPUSA chief of staff. According to Micky's wife, what happened wasn't a misunderstanding or an internal disagreement. It was a coordinated plan, one that she claims Erika and the chief of staff executed long before anyone realized something was wrong. She insists they weren't just reacting to a crisis. They were building one, quietly, strategically, and for reasons that had nothing to do with truth. She didn't release everything at once. Just enough to set the internet on fire. Just enough to make people question why Erika always seemed to be at the center of every Turning Point scandal, and why the chief of staff always emerged untouched. The screenshots she shared weren't rumors. They were receipts. And the timestamps lined up perfectly with the events that had destroyed careers, created chaos, and now pointed directly at Erika and TPUSA leadership, working together behind closed doors. Now the internet wants answers, because if what Micky McCoy's wife leaked is real, then the scandal wasn't an accident. It was an operation. It started with a whisper. One small comment slipped into a private conversation that Micky McCoy's wife never intended to repeat. But secrets have weight, and the truth she carried became too heavy to hold for months. She had watched the Turning Point USA scandals unfold publicly while knowing privately that the chaos wasn't random, wasn't accidental, and wasn't the result of miscommunication or political miscalculation. She knew because she had seen the real story forming from behind the scenes. Long before anyone outside the circle realized something was wrong, the moment she finally spoke, the internet erupted. Because what she revealed didn't just implicate one person, it tied Erika Kirk directly to the TPUSA chief of staff in a way that suggested the entire scandal wasn't a collapse, but a construction. According to her, it all began in a series of quiet meetings that no one was supposed to notice. Micky McCoy, a mid-level staffer with enough access to overhear but not enough power to intervene, often worked late. His wife sometimes visited him at the office or picked him up after long strategy nights. And over time, she began recognizing patterns. She recalled seeing Erika walking into rooms normally reserved for high-level operations staff, flanked by the TPUSA chief of staff, often at hours when leadership usually avoided being seen together. These weren't ordinary leadership discussions. They were private sessions conducted in whispers and fragmented phrases. She told her audience that the first time she sensed something was off was during a night months before the scandal broke. Micky had forgotten his phone at the office, so she drove back to get it. When she arrived, the building was almost dark except for one hallway. As she walked toward Micky's desk, she heard voices, Erika's unmistakable tone, and the firm cadence of the chief of staff. Curious and uneasy, she paused. It wasn't that the meeting itself was suspicious. It was the way they were speaking. The phrases were indirect, coded in careful language. Words like timing, impact, public response, and narrative entry point floated through the hallway. She heard Erika ask, "Do we have the moment identified?" The chief of staff responded, "We have two possible triggers. Whichever one happens first, we ride it." At the time, she didn't understand what that meant. But when the scandal broke weeks later, she replayed that conversation repeatedly in her mind. She explained how, over time, she noticed more late-night meetings that looked less like planning and more like plotting. Meetings where no staffers were allowed, where even some executives weren't invited. Meetings where Erika appeared not as a supportive figure tied to Charlie by marriage, but as a strategist in her own right, one who held influence far beyond what the public understood. For the first time, Micky's wife realized that Erika wasn't just involved in TPUSA's operations. She was operating above them, the leak that finally pushed her to speak out. Involved a set of internal emails she saw accidentally. One evening, she sat at Micky's desk waiting for him to finish a call, and his computer chimed. The message preview revealed a thread between Erika, the chief of staff, and two unnamed consultants. The subject line read, "Crisis Optics, Phase 2. Even before she opened the message, her stomach tightened. She didn't click. "I never logged into his email," she clarified, but the preview was enough. The line she never forgot read, "Once the disruption hits, control the messaging immediately. He needs to appear calm, centered, and in command. That will frame the chaos as leadership." Those words burned into her memory. It wasn't until later that she understood exactly who he referred to. And when the scandal finally broke, when footage hit the internet showing manufactured chaos around Charlie Kirk, the line made perfect sense. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't bad luck. It was planned down to the emotional framing of the moment. When she confronted Micky about what she saw, he tried to dismiss it at first, tired, stressed, and afraid of losing his job. But eventually, he admitted she wasn't imagining things. He told her that for weeks, he had witnessed strange coordination between Erika and the chief of staff. He described how they would meet privately before major announcements, how they avoided discussing plans through official channels, and how certain staff members were instructed to stay flexible, because a moment might arise that required rapid response. But what truly shocked her wasn't the planning, it was the tone. Micky said the conversations he overheard didn't sound like people preparing to manage a crisis. They sounded like people preparing to choreograph one. She kept digging quietly. She pieced together the timeline, cross-referencing when Erika was at the TPUSA office with when key decisions were made. She realized that the nights when Erika and the chief of staff met were always followed by sudden shifts in strategy or unexpected changes to event formats, sudden reassignments, or oddly timed public statements. Each shift made more sense in hindsight. They weren't reacting to problems. They were engineering catalysts. But the final confirmation came when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. She recalled hearing Erika say, "It doesn't matter how it starts. What matters is that we're ready the second it does. The clip is the story, not the moment." The chief of staff responded, "We'll position people where they need to be. Just make sure he stays on script." She didn't know who he was at first. But once the scandal exploded and Charlie became the face of the chaos, everything aligned perfectly. She watched the footage along with the rest of the world, her heart pounding as she recognized the exact scenario she had heard them describe. The disruption, the emotional heightening, the carefully timed response. She had seen them plan it. Now she was watching the plan unfold. The pressure on her built as more scandals hit TPUSA long after the first incident. She kept asking herself why no one else was seeing what she saw, why no one else connected Erika's presence to the moments that consistently pushed the organization into controversy and then transformed those controversies into publicity. It wasn't until the recent avalanche of revelations, Joe Rogan's leaks, the bodyguard interviews, and the unnamed insiders that she finally felt compelled to break her silence. The weight of what she knew was too heavy. The truth didn't feel optional anymore. So she spoke. She revealed the meetings, the phrases, the receipts, and the timeline. She explained how Erika Kirk and the TPUSA chief of staff weren't just caught in the middle of scandal. They were the architects of it. She explained how they manipulated chaos to create leverage, how they used controversy to steer narratives, and how everything the public thought was accidental had been calculated. Her final message was the one that hit the hardest. She said, "This didn't happen to TPUSA. They built it." Erika and the chief of staff didn't just know, they were in on it. And once she said those words out loud, the internet understood why this story never added up before. Because the truth wasn't hidden behind the chaos. The truth was the chaos. The moment Micky McCoy's wife went public with her story, everything she had hidden for months exploded into the open. The leak spread so fast that by the time the first reaction videos went up, Reporters were already scrambling to verify the details. What she revealed wasn't just gossip, it was a blueprint. A blueprint that showed how Erika Kirk and the TPUSA Chief of Staff moved behind the scenes, weaving chaos into strategy and manipulating public perception long before the public ever caught on. Her story didn't rely on vague memories or exaggerated claims. It came from patterns she'd noticed, fragments she'd pieced together, and conversations she'd overheard at moments when no one thought she was listening. But part 2 of her confession. What she revealed next shifted the story from suspicious behavior to deliberate orchestration. She explained that after the first scandal hit the media, TPUSA staff immediately went into damage control mode. But what struck her as strange was how prepared certain people seemed. Instead of shock or confusion, Erika and the Chief of Staff acted like they knew the scandal was coming. While the rest of the staff panicked, they talked calmly, issued instructions, and controlled every narrative angle within minutes. According to her, the Chief of Staff had an entire messaging strategy ready to deploy the moment chaos started. Most crisis responses take hours, sometimes days to organize. But this time, the public statements, the social media posts, the talking points, and even the footage edits were ready almost instantly. It was as if the crisis had been rehearsed. Micky's wife said that after she saw the internal flurry of communications, she realized the emails weren't typical crisis management. They read like a script, and Erika, she explained, wasn't reacting, she was directing. One of the most disturbing details she shared came from a phone call she overheard between the Chief of Staff and a media consultant. The consultant asked, "Are we still aiming for the 2-phase rollout?" The Chief of Staff responded, "Phase 1 is already in motion. We just need the emotional spike." She didn't know what Phase 1 or emotional spike meant at the time, but when she watched the later footage that went viral and saw the crescendo of shouting, confrontation, and tension, she realized the emotional spike was the moment of chaos that had been predicted. The moment they needed for the clip. That clip, she noted, was released with stunning speed. Multiple camera angles, professional captions, and perfectly framed messaging were uploaded to TPUSA channels almost instantly after the chaos erupted. It didn't look like footage captured in the heat of the moment. It looked like footage that had been prepared for release. She said the most chilling part was what she discovered next. The Chief of Staff had told several junior staffers to stand down during the incident. These weren't security personnel. They were content production staff. Yet they were instructed to remain in position instead of stepping back to safety. That wasn't normal. That wasn't protocol. That was staging. She called this realization the moment she felt physically sick. From there, she noticed a pattern of calculated decisions that suggested Erika and the Chief of Staff were working in tandem. Erika had always moved carefully around TPUSA hierarchy, but now it looked purposeful. She frequently inserted herself into strategic conversations, focusing on optics rather than policy. When team members questioned unusual decisions or inconsistencies, Erika was always the one to intervene. Offering emotional justification, "We're protecting him," she would say, or "We're preserving the movement." But Micky's wife claimed it wasn't protection, it was manipulation. Wrapped in the language of loyalty, she described one incident where a senior staffer questioned the ethics of manufacturing viral moments. She heard the staffer say, "This isn't genuine engagement. This is manipulation." Erika allegedly responded with a chilling calm. "Authenticity is perception. If they perceive it, it's real." Those words, the wife said, haunted her. Erika's influence didn't stop at strategy meetings or optics planning. According to multiple sources she referenced, Erika controlled who had access to Charlie Kirk, whose calls were passed along, and whose concerns never reached him. She was the gatekeeper. But not just the gatekeeper, she was the filter, the interpreter, the architect of the story the public believed about Charlie's leadership. Then came the turning point. The whistleblower, months later, who described Operation Stabilizer, a strategy, allegedly, co-created by Erika and the Chief of Staff to guide TPUSA through a year of political turbulence. The operation wasn't about stability. It was about engineering moments that would generate emotional investment, increase donations, and strengthen the image of TPUSA. Leadership. The leaked notes referenced terms like planned disruption, controlled opposition, and stimulus response messaging. Operation allegedly relied on stirring tension to rally support, then using Charlie's calm reaction as proof of leadership strength. These were not strategies the wider staff knew about. These were inner circle plans. And according to Micky's wife, Erika was at the center of them. She then revealed the most explosive part. Erika wasn't merely supporting the Chief of Staff's plans, she was involved in coordinating them. She cited multiple occasions where she overheard Erika discussing timelines, anchor points, and public triggers, terms that were used repeatedly in leaked documents. But the real bombshell came when she described the night she finally realized what she had been hearing for months. It was 3 days before the scandal broke. Micky had texted her that he would be working late again. She arrived at the office to bring him dinner. As she approached the hallway, she heard Erika's voice, calm, authoritative, confident. She heard Erika say, "Once the moment hits, make sure the camera angles match the narrative. If the footage doesn't align, the story collapses." The Chief of Staff replied, "We'll have 3 cameras in place. The rest is up to the crowd." She froze. This wasn't crisis preparation. This was crisis construction, and Erika wasn't. Supporting Ichi was leading it. After the scandal broke and the footage went viral, everything clicked for her. The carefully timed camera angles, the strategic reactions, the rapid release of edited clips. It wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. What made the situation even more disturbing was how successfully Erika and the Chief of Staff controlled the aftermath. Erika guided the public responses. She crafted statements that framed Charlie as a stabilizing force in chaos. She reportedly coached him before interviews, shaping his tone, his phrasing, even his emotional responses. She wasn't just influencing the narrative, she was scripting it. As Micky's wife watched all this unfold, the guilt of staying silent grew unbearable. The more she saw the public praising Charlie for handling chaos, the more she felt they were praising a performance he never knew was staged. But what pushed her over the edge wasn't the public response. It was what happened to Micky. According to her, the moment Micky expressed discomfort with how the scandal was being handled, he was gradually pushed out. Meetings without explanation, reassignments without reason, until one day he was quietly let go under the guise of department restructuring. She said he looked defeated when he told her. That was the moment she decided she couldn't stay quiet anymore. When she finally spoke publicly, she didn't just expose Erika and the Chief of Staff. She exposed the truth. The chaos was never accidental. The scandal was never organic. It was planned by the 2 people who stood to gain the most. When Micky McCoy's wife released her first statement, people thought it was just another insider confession. Yes, but still within the realm of political gossip. But by the time she released the rest of her information, the story had outgrown its category. It was no longer gossip. It was an What she revealed next dropped like a bomb into a political ecosystem already trembling from recent scandals. According to her, the chaos the world had seen, those viral moments, those shocking clips, those confrontations that had propelled Charlie Kirk into headlines, were not accidental eruptions. They were orchestrated pressure points, carefully engineered, precisely timed, and framed in a way that would ensure maximum emotional resonance. And yet, as explosive as those revelations were, she insisted the public had only seen the surface. She explained that the real story, the part she had been afraid to tell, came from the weeks after the scandal exploded. While the world interpreted those events as spontaneous, what she saw behind the scenes was a sophisticated delicto machine engaging its next phase. She said that Erika and the Chief of Staff had anticipated backlash, criticism, and outrage. In fact, she claimed those reactions were needed. because the next phase of their strategy relied on portraying Charlie as a victim of chaos, targeted by forces that wanted to destroy him. What better way to create a rallying effect than to show him calmly standing in the middle of a storm that had been manufactured around him? She recalled a private conversation between Erika and the chief of staff that confirmed this. She witnessed them reviewing social media responses the night after the event. Instead of expressing concern or shock, they celebrated certain posts. They highlighted which reactions would amplify public sympathy and which narratives needed boosting. One comment thread in particular, one that painted Charlie as being under attack, was singled out. She remembered Erika saying, "This is the angle. If we reinforce this, he becomes untouchable." It was in that moment that she realized the most disturbing truth of all. They were not just manipulating events. They were manipulating people. She then described how TPUSA staffers were instructed through a series of internal messages to support the narrative by posting variations of the same sentiment. Charlie handled this better than anyone else could. The message spread across dozens of personal accounts within minutes, not because people believed it independently, but because they were told to. Many followers believed the praise was organic. Many supporters thought the admiration came naturally. But the reality was far more calculated. Each post was another piece of a coordinated tapestry. Then, according to Micky's wife, things escalated even further. In the weeks following the scandal, she noticed that Erika and the chief of staff didn't merely maintain control of the narrative, they fortified it. They began identifying potential threats: staffers, insiders, or external commentators who questioned the authenticity of the event. Those who raised concerns were gradually removed from meetings, reassigned, or pushed out altogether. She mentioned one staffer named Damien, a man who had worked at TPUSA long enough to understand its rhythms. When he voiced his discomfort with the engineered chaos, the chief of staff reportedly told him, "If you don't understand the vision, you don't belong in the room." Within days, Damien's access was restricted. A week later, he was gone. Another internal whistleblower allegedly questioned the ethics of staging confrontations. According to her, Erika personally stepped in not to address the concern, but to dismantle it. She allegedly told the staffer, "We don't stage anything. We prepare for reality. And reality can be influenced." Those words became a focal point of the independent investigation that followed, but the most chilling revelation came when she finally admitted something she had held back from the public. Erika and the chief of staff were not just coordinating political strategies, they were protecting each other. She said she had watched them operate with a level of trust that felt deeper than a professional partnership. They spoke in shorthand, in half sentences, in fragments that only made sense to people who shared the same secrets. They moved together as though they were two halves of the same plan. And she remembered a moment she had kept to herself for months when Erika looked at the chief of staff after reviewing a particularly intense week of backlash and said, "People don't need to know what we're doing. They only need to feel it." The chief of staff nodded and replied, "Then let them feel chaos. We'll handle the story." That was the moment she realized Erika and the chief of staff were not simply participating in TPUSA's operations, they were steering them. But even that wasn't the final twist. The true shock came when Micky's wife revealed that at least one of the viral scandals, the one that shifted public perception most, dramatically had reportedly involved not just coordination, but direct intervention. She claimed that agents affiliated with TPUSA leadership positioned themselves within the crowd to spark the confrontation at precisely the right moment. Their job was simple: initiate tension, escalate it just enough, and make sure cameras caught every second, according to her. The footage that the world saw Charlie stepping in, attempting to restore order, had been planned down to the placement of bodies in the room. And when that footage went viral, Erika and the chief of staff had already prepared the next phase: the fundraising campaigns, the media appearances, and even the talking points for Charlie's interviews. She said she watched them draft statements that sounded sincere, personal and emotional statements that framed Charlie as the pillar of calm leadership. statements he believed he was delivering authentically, not knowing the entire moment he was responding to had been engineered. That revelation ripped through the internet with devastating force. People who once admired the footage as raw authenticity now questioned every detail. Commentators who praised Charlie for his composure were suddenly forced to reckon with the possibility that they had praised a performance he didn't even know he was giving. Supporters felt manipulated. Critics felt vindicated. And those closest to the Kirks, especially the extended family, felt betrayed by the idea that Erika, who always defended her actions as protective, may have been orchestrating the very crises she claimed to help navigate. The backlash against Erika intensified, and yet she remained silent. But the more damning question emerged from the shadows. Why did Erika and the chief of staff need chaos in the first place? Micky's wife offered her answer. She said Erika wanted influence within TPUSA beyond the role of a supportive spouse. The chief of staff wanted control over the organization's public trajectory. Together, chaos was their currency. Each scandal tightened their grip. Each viral moment strengthened their narrative power. And each crisis positioned them as the invisible hands guiding the movement. By the time Micky's wife finished her statement, the internet had already decided the truth. Erika and the chief of staff